us started before the reading, I'd like to ask Jeanette to talk a little bit about where the title came from for this panel, This Place Matters. Would you be good enough to do that, Jeanette?
I would be good enough, yes. Actually, I shamelessly stole this title. Those of you who live around here or have been here before probably knew that Susan Lindquist, who was an extraordinary person out here on the Cape, worked tirelessly for a number of nonprofits, was a writer, she had a wonderful show on WOMR called This Place Matters, in which she interviewed people from all walks of life on the Cape. She died recently, and a huge loss to this community. So it's almost partly because it's such a great title, and I said we've got to use that, but partly also to honor her, that we're calling this Place Matters.
Thank you, Jeanette. Let me introduce the authors. Amy Hoffman is the author of The Off-Season. She's a writer, teacher, and longtime LGBTQ activist. Some of you may have heard her excellent contribution to yesterday's Finding Stonewall panel, just superb. She's published 4 books. The first 3 were memoirs: Hospital Time, about taking care of her friends with AIDS, An Army of Ex-Lovers, My Life at the Gay Community News, and Lies About My Family, what a wonderful title, about her family's immigration history. And then, of course, we have the Provincetown novel, The Off-Season. She was editor-in-chief of Women's Review of Books. She teaches in the Solstice Low Residency MFA program at Pine Manor College and does editing and consulting. Her MFA is from the University of Massachusetts. She also teaches at Emerson College. Jeanette de Beauvoir, did I say that right? I've been practicing for a long time. She writes about characters uncovering truths and occasional dark secrets for various genres, mystery and historical fiction. Her Martine Ledoux series takes place in Montreal, and some of you may know her Sidney Riley series that takes place here in Provincetown. She also wrote Our Lady of the Dunes, which is a story of coming of age during World War II, and Lethal Alliances, which is a political intrigue / romance taking place during the reign of Philippe le Bel. A fascinating book with so much relevance to today. So I would like to ask, I believe, Jeanette, you were going to start with the reading. Please, take it away.
So when we were talking about this panel and talking about what we want to say about This Place Matters, both Amy and I were thinking, foremost of all, about the natural environment here, which is very, very, I shouldn't say very unique. I can't believe I just said that. That did not come out of my mouth. I have not had enough coffee yet. Which is unique. And one of the things that is unique about us is our particular relationship to the ocean and the dunes that are the barrier between us here in the town and the ocean. And so I wanted to read a short passage from my historical novel, Our Lady of the Dunes, which describes it. The book briefly takes place out in one of the dune shacks, and I wrote it in one of the dune shacks, which is really kind of fun. I had a fellowship out there and went out with my manual typewriter that I had gotten on eBay and clacked away at it, and pretty much got much of the book finished in those 2 weeks. The amazing thing about writing with a typewriter is you actually see what you're doing. There's this pile of paper that's growing, and you're saying, yes, I got that done. And of course, you bring it all back home and revise the whole thing. But that's part of being an author. So I'm talking, this is the point of view of a 16-year-old who has left her life in Boston in 1942 and been sent by her parents to the dune shack because they thought it would be safer for her. Not necessarily the case, but I've never been very interested before in nature as a concept, as an abstract. Nature for my family is an afternoon on the swan boats in the public gardens, or a walk over Boston Common. Nature is the ritual summer foray up into the White Mountains of New Hampshire, with Mother fretting about getting bitten by bugs and getting her dress soiled, and Daddy looking longingly for a quiet place to read a book in peace. I'm a city girl, born and bred, and it has to be said, feeling slightly superior to anyone who isn't. Out here, though, I began to realize how limiting and narcissistic that existence can become. It's starting to occur to me that I've been missing out on something important, something essential in a magical, mystical, real way. Cities are all about people, what they do, who they meet, what they wear, where they create, how they can leave something of themselves behind. A mark, a child, anything, so that other people will know that they were there. And people have been around for such a small amount of time. The dunes are prehistoric, taking me back to an age that thought only of survival, the immediacy of every day, of every moment. And the things that seem so important are diminished by the timelessness of the back shore. Here, glaciers moved slowly and grandly over the landscape, scraping the bedrock, depositing boulders where it would. Here, glacial kettle holes show up in unexpected places, creating small ponds of tranquil surfaces and unplumbed depths. Here, the Ice Age carved an oddly shaped bay, nearly encircled by land, a sandbar that would shift with still more climactic changes, move as it is buffeted by hurricanes and snowstorms. Here, for hundreds of years, nature has played with humanity, daring it to construct something permanent, laughing at people's limited ideas of permanence. Here, the ocean gives life and takes it away just as quickly. Here, storms throw ships up against the coast, pounding them onto rocks, stranding them on sand, creating a graveyard of merchants and pirates and adventurers alike. And yet, in all the important ways, nothing changes. There's no mark to leave behind here. Everything is transient, impermanent. My footsteps washed away by the tide. The dune shacks that have succumbed to storms, to the wind and rain that have lashed this sandbar for the past 1,000 years, and that will no doubt continue to do so long after we're all gone. They'll go too, as they already are, one by one. We think that we make our mark, but we pass on and leave no impression of our passage here. And that's what's right. Death here in the dunes is as natural as birth. It is a cycle that repeats and renews the shifting sands. All creatures are pulled into the cycle. All play their role. As I walk, I pass the carcasses of dead beetles in the sand and dune grasses, dozens of them there, as though their lifespan had come to an end all at once, today. And here too is magic. The dunes are swept with stardust, filled with shapeshifters, with fairies, with strange and powerful creatures of the night that are wilder than our wildest fantasies. You feel them rather than see them. You sense their eyes watching you, their laughter trailing after you, their whispers in the dark, and the tall dunes grasses marking your passage and dancing merrily in your wake. The shapeshifters are trees, they are mist, they dissolve into the very sand beneath your feet when you try to look at them. But the magic is there, just beyond reach, visible only, as are all of the important things in life, just out of the corner of your eye. Boston is bereft of this energy, bereft of this mystery, bereft of this magic. To live in the city, I conclude, is to lose a fundamental part of your soul.
Sure. Well, every once in a while, as a writer, I apply for a residency or a grant. And on one of those applications, I was asked to describe the overarching theme of my oeuvre, or something like that. And I'd never really thought about having an overarching theme. And the stuff I've written is all on quite different topics. So I didn't want to answer this question about theme. I decided it was pretentious. Let critics think about themes. I'm a practitioner, nosing my way forward. Of course, eventually I had to finish this grant application, and so I had to answer the question, and I realized it was really pretty obvious. Everything I write, and in fact all of my activism and my teaching, is about community. Queer community, nuclear and chosen families, networks of mutually inspiring artists. There's a wonderful moment in the memoir by the poet Judy Grahn. Her memoir is called The Simple Revolution, in which she runs into somebody who had opposed her in a very bitter political fight. And these two women had not seen each other for decades, and Judy Grahn decides to almost ignore her. There was such hostility between them. But the woman doesn't allow that to happen. She rushes up to Judy Grahn, she embraces her, and Judy Grahn says, "Why are you behaving this way? We hated each other." And the woman says, "Yes, that's true, but I would die for you." And that's what I mean by community. These women were all part of this same community, the same time, the same atmosphere. We're bound by our lives together, whether we want to or not. My friend Richard Burns used to say, "You can't choose your family, and you can't choose your friends either." At the time, I was dating a woman I couldn't stand. So how could I not love Provincetown? On the one hand, it's a place of chosen community. With one exception, the characters in this novel are all Washashores, as I am, whose reasons for moving to Provincetown range from physical and emotional healing to making the time and space for artistic endeavor to answering a religious call. But maybe Washashore, which we often use, is the wrong word because that implies randomness. And as many people have noted, Provincetown is too remote for randomness. You don't end up here by accident. You have to make a decision. You have to make a trek to get here. This is actually, I think, one of the things that makes Provincetown's communities special, that they have an element of choice to them. For more than a century, Provincetown has beckoned with its arm that stretches out into the Atlantic to artists, writers, queers, political radicals, outcasts, and eccentric, because it's far not only from the mainland, but also from the mainstream. Here among the dunes and the scrub pines and the changeable sea, one could walk and spin new thoughts into the bowl of the sky. On the other hand, Provincetown's a small town. That may be where we hated each other, but I would die for you dynamic comes in. The streets are narrow, the houses are crowded together, there's one supermarket, one library, a town meeting. The winters are stormy, the electricity goes out, it's claustrophobic. What else is there for entertainment but other people who are infinitely interesting and also infinitely exasperating? And even then, they're totally interesting. I want to read a section from my novel, The Off-Season, that brings together some of this interpersonal complexity that I've been hinting at. A little background to make it comprehensible. Nora, my narrator, who is a visual artist, and her partner, Jeanette, who's a tech whiz, have just moved from Brooklyn to Provincetown. Jeanette is recovering from breast cancer treatment, an ordeal that has disrupted their relationship. In Provincetown, they hope to heal their relationship and themselves, and Nora wants to more deeply explore her art. But her good intentions get overturned almost immediately when she meets the charismatic and flirtatious Baby Harris. In this section, Nora invites Baby to go swimming. Supposedly, women choose invisibility when asked whether they would prefer that or flight as a superpower, but not me. Not anymore. Who wouldn't prefer to fly? The water at the tip of the cape was freezing and absolutely transparent. You could see your toes among the pebbles before you took your dive, and stroking through the waves really did feel a bit like flying. Not flying like the aerialist gulls which swoop and glide without effort, but flying like the pigeons, who have to put some muscle into it, to push themselves through the gelid air. Janelle, I said as the chill settled in, I've decided to swim during every single month of the year. Some of the year-rounders did it as a kind of spiritual oneness with nature thing. I had overheard them talking about it in the checkout line at the Stop and Shop. So after that, Nora decides to call Baby and see if Baby wants to go swimming with her. It's November. Want to go swimming, I asked my new friend, if that's what she was. Oh, it's December. I'm aware of that, I said. I'm going to go every month. One of those, said Baby. You're on. Baby cheated. She showed up wearing a wetsuit. Gorgeous, it made no secret of her belly and her butt. The day was sunny and cloudless, with a hard, steady wind. Even at Herring Cove Beach, which is on the bay, so somewhat sheltered, there were whitecaps and rolling waves breaking onto the shore with a clatter of pebbles. The gulls were swinging wildly back and forth, and farther out you could see the telltale splashes of a flock of gannets dive-bombing mackerel. Sitting in the car with the heater blasting, I had been trying to see the scene as a late August afternoon with the wind kicking up, but the cold outside was palpable. I stuck my head out the window. "No fair," I yelled to Baby. She came over and leaned on my car for balance while she yanked off her cowboy boots. "What?" she said, attempting to tuck her hair into an old-fashioned rubber bathing cap decorated with yellow daisies. I jumped out of the car and stripped down to my Speedo. "I have to do this fast or I won't go through with it," I said, and I took off down the beach. My extremities must have frozen instantly because I couldn't feel the rocks underfoot. Everyone complains about them. Some have paranoid theories. Of course, the gay beach is the one with the rocks. You don't see any rocks at Race Point. I hoped Baby was following behind me, but I didn't turn around to look. Without stopping, I flung myself into the sea. Rush of green bubbles, white foam, salt taste, crash up from foaming, freezing water into freezing air. Breathe in, breathe out, flail onto the shore, run back over pebbles. Baby was standing next to my car, holding open a big pink towel. "That was fast," she said, enfolding me in the towel and vigorously rubbing my arms and back to warm me. After a moment, I took it from her to dry my hair. When I looked up, she was strolling down to the water. She did a little knee bend, a leap up on the rebound, and dove into a wave. Her yellow head popped up in the trough, and she stroked leisurely back and forth along the shoreline a few times. I watched her, and the gulls, and the gannets. How could they stand it? Finally, she emerged and picked her way back up to the beach to the car. "Refreshing," she said. Even back in my dry clothes, I couldn't stop shivering. "I guess this isn't for me," I admitted. "You don't have hypothermia if you're still shivering. You'll get used to it. Let's go for coffee, it'll warm you up." "You're wearing a wetsuit, red boots, and a flowered bathing cap," I pointed out. "Keeping your head warm is the key. And this is P-Town, my dear. No one will look twice. But if you don't feel comfortable..." "It's not that," I said. "I'm freezing. I need to put on a sweatshirt and a pair of warm socks. And Jeanette will wonder what happened to me." "Cold feet and a guilty conscience," said Baby. "I must be getting somewhere." "I have work to do," I insisted. I turned the key in the ignition. "Work it good then," said Baby. When I looked in the rearview mirror, she was wiggling her fingers goodbye. She saw me noticing and blew me a kiss. On the way home, I kept thinking about that towel and what might have happened if it hadn't come between Baby's hands and my skin.
Thank you very much. That was great. So we'd like to get into some discussion now, and you know, having written about Provincetown myself, there were a couple of things that came to mind that I thought would be fun for us to kick around, and I was just looking for a way to frame them, and my thoughts went, for good or bad, to what other people think about the work we write and its relationship to Provincetown and what they believe they know about Provincetown. So we're sort of framing the discussion in that general area. And I thought, just to kick things off, I would read you a couple of short sentences, one from a review of one of Jeanette's books and one from Amy's books. it's interesting to me what these folks have to say here. So we'll start with Amy's. The author evokes through words, and I love this, and some sort of magic, the unique, mystic character that makes Provincetown such a beloved a place. And for Jeanette, as a year-round resident of Provincetown where this takes place, I'm impressed with the accuracy of the writing. Ms. de Beauvoir has captured the essence of our town, and in the process given us a compelling story with well-drawn, interesting characters. Well, what struck me about those two reviews was there were a lot of benchmarks out there already. And obviously Provincetown matters because people are already coming to the book saying, yes, you did that right. Yes, I can resonate with that. So I thought I'd just ask the opening, more general question to whomever wants to respond first. Why does P-Town matter? What makes the place, quote unquote, very unique?
You won't live that down. I will never live that down.
Who would like to take that
Crawl
one on
under the
first?
table.
Go ahead. Well, I think there are a number of things, as I said in my spiel. I think the community of Provincetown is a very special one, and I think the remoteness of Provincetown sort of enables it to be what it is. But I also think the physical environment that we find ourselves in here is so is unique and special because of the light, because we're surrounded by the sea, because of the vegetation we have here, which is unusual and unique, because of the rare birds and animals that live here. And I think all of that combines to make the place both matter and very fragile. And I think with climate change, we are realizing that more and more. So it's special in the way that it's also endangered. And we really have to work to hang on to its specialness.
Yeah, I would just start by saying that every place matters, and I'm not trying to do that in a way of, Black Lives Matter, all lives matter, it's not the same thing, but there are stories to be found for people who write anywhere. I think that one of the things that's special about Provincetown is that it is so bizarre that you don't have to make stuff up, I mean, there are so many places that you say, okay, well, all right, I'll have this happen and this happen and this happen. And frankly, all you have to do is walk down Commercial Street and you've got 5 stories right there.
Yeah.
So I think that that's one of the things that, speaking as a creative person and as a writer, is infinitely special and matters about this place. And I concur with everything that Amy has said, but I would also add sort of this history of what's here, that's so many different groups, and it's almost like you could be an archaeologist and look at these different times when different groups have washed ashore, have arrived here, and have built a life here and a community, and somehow, for better or for worse, and sometimes better than others, most of those communities are still enduring and still working together and still living together. So I think that those are things that definitely, I think for any of us who live here or who visit here or who love this place, make it a special place and say that this place matters. But I think also it's just this amazing carnival year-round that just really inspires. Obviously the light inspires visual artists, but certainly the people and the events that happen here inspire writers.
Thank you. I think I'm pretty sure it was Mary Heaton Vorse who compared the town to an onion, having many layers. And as we sort of talk through the notion of this panel, those layers actually extend out to readers. And so people come at Provincetown in varying ways. It's extremely well known by some, not very well known by others. It may be known for a specific relationship. The gay male community knows Provincetown differently than a fishing family certainly does. So, there's so many different aspects of this town. How do you characterize your experience of those layers and sort of how do you accommodate all of that? The notion that people have so many different concepts of what Provincetown is, and of course you have your own. Maybe would you like to start?
I guess so. I mean, I think you're absolutely right that there are many layers to there are so many different communities in Provincetown. And I'm sure that's true of any place, as Jeanette said, but because Provincetown is small and intimate, I think all of those different communities can't help but rub up against each other, sometimes in creative ways and sometimes in antagonistic ways. And certainly my book only deals with one small tranche of those communities. I'm mostly writing about writers and artists and gay men and lesbians. And that's clearly only one part of a community that also includes Jamaican workers and Eastern European students and visitors from all over the country and straight families and gay families and all sorts of other people. I can't even list all of the different communities here. So, yeah, I think I'm only dealing with a small part of that, which I've gotten to know through my own particular lens.
Yeah, I think that's true for all of us, and I feel really guilty about it, to be honest, because I'm obviously my ego is stroked, and I'm delighted when people say, oh, you captured Provincetown and you captured this group, and the reality is I didn't. You know, I got what, in essence, when I'm talking now about my mystery series, I based my protagonist in many ways upon myself, because that's my perspective and that's the easiest way for me to write. And as I was thinking about her 2 or 3 books in, I was realizing that I am not presenting Provincetown. I'm presenting my perception of Provincetown. And that really came to light with me one day. I was walking down Commercial Street with a friend of mine who's a cop-here. And we were walking along, and I'm just enjoying whatever I'm enjoying. And she said, oh my God, there's a drug deal. I didn't see that. That absolutely went over her head. And it's not because I'm not suspicious or not anything. It's just that that's not the reality I experienced walking down Commercial Street. And as Buck says, you know, a gay man walking down Commercial Street is going to see things that I don't see. Now, I may see some things that other people don't, because I've got my own reality and my own community here, and there are certain people I know and I'm going to greet, and there are certain people I'm going to avoid because it is a small town. But it's still my reality. And so there's part of me that that wonders how much of this I'm leaving out. And again, as I say, you know, my ego loves it when people say this is Provincetown, but to me, it's a concern. And so one of the things I've tried to do is bring in people to the book who have some different perspectives. And in fact, I did replicate that very scene. My protagonist's boyfriend is in law enforcement, and they walk down the street and he saw a drug deal that she didn't see. And I'm just trying to sort of illuminate this fact that we all have a different perspective. And the other thing is, and this comes back to talking about Susan Lindquist at the beginning of this session, which is that when I talk to people, there are so many, and there's no way to honor them all, but there are so many amazing personalities in town that we've lost. And wouldn't it be nice to have someone bring some of that back? So I've got, in I think the book that's coming out next, I've got a reference to Ellie, and probably some of you remember Ellie, who used to bring her cart up in front of town hall and belt out, I don't know, Frank Sinatra, and just, you know, and she was such an integral part of the community, whether you liked her music or not, that I'm trying to bring in some of these voices. And I know that I'm failing on a whole bunch of levels. But I do believe that part of taking advantage of the fact that I live in this great place and I've got this opportunity to write about these curious, eccentric, wonderful people, that I need to pay a little of that back by respecting others and trying to tell their stories as well as my own. So that was a long-winded answer.
Oh, I have to say something because my book also has Ellie in it.
Oh, excellent!
I mean, it doesn't have Ellie as Ellie. There's a character who's sort of, because I didn't know Ellie personally. I don't know
And mine does too.
her life.
So maybe Ellie
That's
wasn't the
great.
example
Yeah,
of somebody
Ellie's here in
obscure.
spirit.
Yeah, no, Ellie was there for all of us. I invent sort of a character who's based on Ellie's persona, I guess, and I talk about that in an afterword because I don't want people to confuse my character with the real person. But Ellie used to have a sign next to her.
Living the dream.
Yeah, she said, yeah.
Showgirl, 72
She's
years
72.
young.
Yeah, 72 years young, living my dream. And when I have to say, when I first saw that, I thought it was the creepiest thing I'd ever seen. You know, here was this woman dressed up in a mini skirt and fishnet stockings.
And not actually a woman.
Yeah, and a long wig. And I thought, this is her dream. And but after I sort of got to know, after I saw her a lot more and sort of saw how people responded to her and how I began to respond to her, I felt like, yeah, this is living her dream. It's an eccentric dream, but it's one that she came here with. And so she's actually a good person to talk about.
If I may jump in just for a moment, I'm really honored to own a copy of the book that Ellie wrote, which is actually a stack of mimeographed printed paper about that big. And I recall loving Ellie and thinking that she was wonderful and she was pulling this red wagon and selling her book, but somehow I wasn't comfortable going out in front of all the crowds in Commercial Street to buy the book, so I sent my partner to do it. And Ellie was so effusive when she sold a copy of the book, she nailed him in the middle of Commercial Street. She threw her arms around him, bent him back, gave him a big kiss, and that's one of my favorite memories of Ellie was that joy. I mean, just incredible joy. And I think you're well onto something about the folks that have come before and that have added to the community that share time with us, and we have the gift of being able to bring them onto the page and share
the
others.
obligation in some way.
Yes, indeed. Let's shift just a little bit to the fact that you both have women as your principal characters in your book. And as we talk about these layers of the town and the various groups that have different relationships to the town and perhaps different perceptions of the town. Coming from my perception of the town, I thought of Provincetown very much as a gay male mecca, and it had a strong identity in that regard. Did that notion or that identity present any challenges in any way for you to write about them? Did you write about them differently in the context of Provincetown than you might have had your stories be taking place in Boston or something else?
No, I think my protagonist would be sarcastic anywhere she was. I guess I was less thinking about how she would work out here. My protagonist, I should say, is a straight woman, and she has a boyfriend who's here sometimes and not sometimes. And I actually did that intentionally because one of my goals for this series was to open up Provincetown to cozy mystery readers, who are a very specific group of people who devour books, who often are not on the cutting edge of any of what's going on in Provincetown. And my goal was really, besides telling a good story, which is the goal of every author, I think, was to sort of open up the different people that live here so that folks reading it could see them less as the other and then more as people. So in the first book in the series, I have a bear, but he's not a bear, he's Barry. That's his name. He's a person. He's a human. He has likes and dislikes and loves and idiosyncrasies. And my goal was really to create this storyline that could embrace all the different people eventually who come here and who love this place. So when I started from that perspective, I said, all right, so who is the guide? Because the bottom line for me is whoever you're choosing, I mean, even beyond that, as an author, I am entering into a pact with my reader. I'm saying, take my hand, trust me. I'm going to take you into this story. I'm going to take you somewhere. To me, that's a huge amount of trust. You're giving me hours and hours of your life that you could be spending doing a lot better things than reading my books. So the trust that you've put in me by picking up one of my books and reading it is immense. And I need to be worthy of that. I need to be respectful of that. And so when I choose a protagonist, I want to choose someone that the largest number of people are going to be willing to take the hand and trust and move with. And so if I look at the group of cozy mystery readers in general, the demographic tends to skew straight, middle-aged women. So who are they going to trust? They're going to trust a slightly younger, perhaps, but still straight woman. So it's really important to me to do that, although I do realize that that for a lot of people that's not as representative of Provincetown. See, that's something I don't even care about, because if we are diverse and embrace everybody, then we embrace everybody. So I've not found that people who are not straight women have not wanted to read this. And in fact, I've had quite a few gay men who are really enjoying her boyfriend, who is very sexy, I have to say. But I think that it's not so much you're looking at who do I want to be in this, as much as you're looking at what is my goal for this book. Is it just to tell a good story? Then it could be anybody. If I've got a different goal, then it does matter who it is that you're going to have take the reader by the hand and pull them into the story.
Yeah, I guess for me it comes down to this question of what my lens was looking at Provincetown. And actually, I have a friend who's a poet. When I told her that I was writing this book about, which focused on basically a triangle love affair, she said, "Oh, thank God, you know, everything about Provincetown is about men. I want to read about women in Provincetown." So I was happy for that. And actually, the group of the community of people that emerges in the book, it also includes gay men, also includes this Margot, who's slightly based on Ellie. So there and includes a straight woman minister. It includes a lot of different sorts of people. But I think I kind of started from that lesbian lens.
Thank you. That's great. It's interesting to me that you both have characters named Margot in your books. There's a lot of similarities here. I'd like to shift things just a little bit and start out by speaking a little bit of my initial relationship to Provincetown and see if there are any similarities there, or if you can tell us a little bit about yours. At the time that I was coming out in the 70s, Provincetown was a haven. I was in an interracial relationship. It was actually the only place we could take a breath. It was the only place we felt comfortable. And I recall several moments of, 40 years later, of sheer joy of being spoken to by a person who was a local. We were proudly walking our dog down the street, and lovely people would come up and smile at us and talk to us. It was so different in this world. And so Provincetown grabbed hold of me in my early 20s, and we'd always dreamed of being here. And as life took its course and whatnot, I did end up here. And I knew so little about it even when I came here. I had, first of all, done what a lot of people do, which is to have a place that you use on the weekend, and eventually I was able to be here full time, which was the goal, and I worked towards that. I'm still discovering the layers and the differences and the things that I was unaware of about this town. I find it absolutely fascinating that way. Amy, what was the impetus for you sort of engaging with Provincetown?
Well, Provincetown for me has always been, I think you talked when we were before our panel about Provincetown being also a place of memories. And for me, it has always been a very romantic place. And I think I started coming here with friends in the 70s, like you did. Eventually owned a place here for a while with my partner. We don't own a place here anymore. Provincetown's gotten really expensive, as you all know. But one of my first images of Provincetown was actually in the book, in the memoir Flying by Kate Millett. And I was too lazy to go look it up before this panel, but she talks about coming to Provincetown, and in particular about an affair that she has with this woman while she's in Provincetown. That's just, like I said, very romantic and very appealing. And I think that was sort of my first exposure to Provincetown even before I came here. So in a way, I already had this memory of Provincetown. The reality is, of course, quite different, and as you were saying, much more layered and much more complicated. But I still have this romantic feeling about Provincetown.
I have a totally romantic feeling about Provincetown in a totally different way. All of my academic work was in history, and I absolutely fell in love with that whole Greenwich Village to Provincetown 1916 summer. I mean, Reds is one of my favorite movies, which I'm sure people usually go, oh, you're kidding, but I just love that movie, the story of John Reed and Louise Bryant, the story of just that immense summer of creativity that went on here. I read about that long before I ever came here. And the first time I came here, it was in the winter. I had gotten married, and I married someone who had 2 children, and I had never planned on having children in my life. So we worked out a little bit of a compromise where I told him that I would co-parent with him, but he had to give me a month in the winter by myself to write. And so I sort of, okay, where do I go? We were living in Cambridge, and I said, where do I go? And I remembered the history. I remembered that sense of excitement, and I, of course, was not naive enough to think that I was going to move here in 2000 and rediscover, you know, the ghost of Edna St. Vincent Millay or something, although that would have been nice.
Yeah.
But it really made me feel like this is a place that has this past. It has, in essence, these ghosts. It has this environment of creativity, and if my point is to go somewhere and create, then I should find a place like that. So I started coming here a month during the winter, and when we finally took the leap and bought a place to live here, I had never been here in the summer before. And I almost wanted to sell the house because it just, of course, is a different world. But my initial reaction to Provincetown was also just this total romance of this amazing time that, frankly, part of me wished I had lived in. So.
Well, we're getting close to 11 o'clock, but I want to try to pull some threads together before we take your questions. As you both have been speaking, there's a couple of themes that have emerged for me. Fragility, memory, shifting sands, obviously the people, the passage of time. And that's a spot that I've written about in Homeport Journals. It's basically the end of a lineage of an old whaling family that has dominated the town and has kept their fortune intact. And it's a turning point. The last heirs are passing on. And so what I'd like to focus on for a minute, if you would, is something that came out of my work on that for me. I struggled a little bit with the notion of attributing memory when so many people have memories of Provincetown. And, you know, when you came, I remember the first time I came here with my mother and my sister, and I was a really punky 13-year-old, big for my age, didn't want anything to do with the two of them, went and lay on the beach in front of the post office cafe on my towel, and had this lovely conversation with this man who, about 9 years later, I realized he was trying to pick me up. That was my first memory of Provincetown. But we're creating our own memories, we're giving our characters memories, and then we're encountering the experiences and the memories of others. Do you think about that when you write? Do you think about, oh, will someone relate to this, or does any of that come into your mind? Because I was hung up on that for a while in my work. I was worried that I was going to create something that had no reference point for anybody else.
Well, I think that's true anytime you write fiction. And I would say it's possibly less about memory and more about manners. I think one of the important things, especially as someone who did not grow up here, who was not part of any community here, that it behooves me to be very careful about giving memories to people who did live here longer, so that when I've got a character in one of my books who is an old Portuguese widow, that I am talking to Portuguese widows before I write that.
Yeah.
And that's just manners. I mean, that's just doing it the right way. But the other thing I would say about memory is that memory is usually inaccurate. We've seen this, that things that you absolutely remember happened, and you find out, no, that actually didn't happen. That just, we create things in our minds about our own past individually and our own past collectively. So I don't put a lot of store in memories. I found my own to be faulty. I found others to be faulty. And the reality is that we are first and foremost storytellers. And that if we can weave something into a story that makes it more alive, that gives it more depth, that gives it more layers, then we've done our job.
Yeah, I would go along with that. There are sections in my book where the main character, the narrator, is a painter, which in a way was a total mistake on my part, because I'm not a painter and I'm not very visual and I don't know anything about painting. But I talked to painters and learned about painting online and somehow got that. Anyways, she's painting portraits of various people who she's met, and so they tell her their stories as she's drawing them. And so there are a lot of experiences and memories of different kinds of people that come into that part of the story. And I think you're right, Jeanette, that somehow as a writer you need to do some research, some interviewing, some reading, some thinking about people very different from you. I guess that's all I would say.
Yeah, sure. But the research part is so key, and I will just say a really brief anecdote. My first ever published book, which thank you God is out of print now. I grew up in France, and for me growing up, America was New York and California. And California was all beach. We listened to the Beach Boys. It was all beach. So I'm writing this historical book that takes place partly in California, and I didn't bother to do any research. In my own defense, I was extremely young, but still. So I had a character walking on the beach in San Jose. That was the last time I didn't do my research, because I will tell you, nowadays it's even more viable for people to communicate with you, but even back then, before the internet, people wrote me letters, let me tell you. They noticed. So I think that research is, no matter whether it's about factual things or it's about someone's perceptions of life or whatever it is, that you have to do tons and tons before you even put pen to paper, so to speak.
Well, this has just been fantastic. Is there any questions you have of each other, or anything you'd like to discuss a little bit further that we might have left out before we turn it over to the audience?
I'm good.
You're good? Any questions for our authors here? Yes, ma'am.
First, I feel like I can't talk about memory without talking about AIDS and how many people died here. Just to remember. But my real question is, what do you think gentrification will do to this community or Anya?
Yes.
Well, I think it's already done a lot to this community. I mean, I know people who had to leave Provincetown who were part of that creative cohort of people who made it what it was, who can't afford to live here anymore. And certainly people like me, you know, you talk about coming here in the 70s, sharing a house, being with other people. I mean, that has become pretty impossible, which means that the age of people who come here as visitors and also, I think, end up staying here is getting older and richer. So, yeah, the character of the community is also fragile and changing.
There's a great book, you can find it at Provincetown Bookshop, I'll put in a little plug for them. And I'm not remembering the photographer's first name, but it's Kaplan. And the title of the book is There Was Always a Place to Crash. And it was his photographs of Provincetown in, I believe, the 60s, 70s, 80s. And again, you know, romanticizing the past, as I tend to do because I'm a historian. There are obviously times when you say, oh my goodness, life then was better than it is now here. There was always a place to crash. There was such and such going on. There wasn't such and such going on. And the perspective that we get with history is that every time a major shift, whether it's cultural or physical or whatever happens, it's hard for people to deal with. It's very hard. Change is hard to deal with. And I'm sure that just as we are raging against the changes in town, the old houses that are brought down, the McMansions that are put up, and the huge influx of cars and people and all the things that go along with second home ownership and all these things. Yeah, I mean, I am extraordinarily uncomfortable with it. I do address it in the books, but the reality is I also know that the Portuguese community probably wasn't really thrilled at some of the changes they were seeing. And every community that's lived here, and indeed every other place, every change is different. It's why we're having such racial problems in this country, because there is a group that says, I want it the way it's always been, which may or may not be true, but the reality is they're hanging on to that. And do we have the right to differentiate the way I want it to be the way it always was, but I don't want you to have it the way you think it was the way it always was? Does that make sense? So yeah, I think it's a problem, obviously. It's a huge problem. It is changing the nature of the town. Other things have also changed the nature of the town, and if Amy's right about climate change, we're not going to have a town in 50 years anyway, so.
I'd actually like to, that's a great question, I'd like to jump in on it too. As I mentioned, I started out as someone who was a resident here, but had to work in Boston during the week. I was blessed, and I was so lucky that I did it. I bought a house when you could afford a house. And at the time, it's at the end of one of these great Provincetown dirt lanes, I had 4 Portuguese grandmothers who watched me come and go, and made me pies. They were wonderful. They were just phenomenal people. And I just recently saw a meme that I loved. It was security in Boston, and they had a camera, and it was security in France, and they had a camera, and it was security in Portugal, and they had 5 old ladies looking out of their window. So I was loved. My partner and I were welcomed. If we were 20 minutes late getting there on a Friday night, we were told, you came in late. They were all gone. The neighborhood has been almost completely condo. For some reason, parking is so incredibly important that we're surrounded almost totally by gravel. You could probably park 50 cars in the radius around our place. And as a result, we've turned into great gardens. We have huge hedges. Our neighbors are annoyed because they're not trimmed every week, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. But that's all me griping. The point I'd like to make is, to me, the biggest threat is not that things have changed, but that so many people don't have the same level of commitment to the town that they used to have. So people love this place, and I have a number of friends who really move heaven and earth to be here, but their commitment is for a short period of time during the summer. The condo, it takes care of everything for them. I'm out, getting ready for a tropical storm Dorian, and and they're having somebody do it for them. That's the biggest worry I have. I agree with you, Jeanette, that the town will change, and I think it was Mary Eden Forrest talking about Provincetown leaving Truro, that Provincetown just laughed and went on its way. As long as there's sand to be on, I think, to some degree, Provincetown will laugh and go on its way. My question is how many people will go on their way with it? Because even in my memory, the people that know the town, know the weather, the impact of the ocean, that know how to live with the ocean, that knowledge is diminished. I see that as one of the bigger threats in that whole scenario. Other questions?
Wow, we were really boring or really?
I'm sorry for speaking without raising my hand, but for obvious reasons. But to piggyback, I guess, on the gentrification and also perhaps fiction, would you find it right material for social commentary, almost in a Jane Austen sense, with the gentrification that's happening?
I have to confess, I'm using the theme, probably not to Jane's standards, but I'm using that theme in the sequel to the Homeward Journals. I'm hoping to deal with the friction that is occurring between the people that are scrapping to survive here and the people that can be anywhere in the world they want to be.
I think that she and you are onto something in terms of friction, lending drama to something. But again, I want to be very cautious and very respectful that this place matters. And I am not going to exacerbate issues, and I think it's fine to point them out. I think it's fine to show how they play out in people's lives. But I love this town. I love this place. I love these people, and I'm not going to, for the sake of drama, I think that good storytelling doesn't need to do that.
Are you saying something negative against Jane Austen?
Amy, did you have anything you wanted to
No, I can't add to that. Thank you.
Teasing.
Well, we have so enjoyed this. I feel completely honored and blessed to have connected to be with these two people, and let's all give them a great round.
And we have books on sale.
Yeah, I was going to say, no.